Well, good evening. It is good to see you all. Some of you I literally have not seen in years. I walked in and I was like, wow, truly there are people I have not seen in years, and it is good to be back together. My name, by way of introduction, is the Reverend Brian Wallace. I'm the former West Branch minister before you all got to be too much, and I traded you out for the East. I don't know how that bargain worked out for me, Sheldon. We'll have to talk about that later. But I'm really pleased to be here tonight and to get to share about a topic that I care really deeply about because I'm a nerd. So you might say, well, Brian, how much of a nerd are you? Well, I'm this much of a nerd. I have a physics degree, which means that while all the Christian thought majors at Grove City College were out playing Ultimate Frisbee, I was up in the lab playing with electronics and optics and all other kinds of stuff. And then we all went to seminary, and they were like, I never saw you. I know, that's because I was actually doing work while you were playing Ultimate Frisbee. And so I have a physics degree and I have a computer science degree. And along the way, through a very circuitous route, I ended up in 2012 starting a business here in Pittsburgh on a whim. It was supposed to be a side hustle, and I said, I bought too much camera equipment, and the number one way that any person who's bought too much equipment justifies it is to say, well, I can rent it out to other people. And I managed to find a good friend of mine now who lived out in this part near the airport, and he had made the same mistake and had the same angry spouse. And we said, if we get together, we can rent this equipment out together, and we can make a little money. And so we did. And what started off as a very small thing suddenly became a business that had 5 part-time employees, and we grew to be the largest camera rental company in Pittsburgh. We worked with the BBC. We worked with Dancing with the Stars. We worked with Sony Pictures. And I was like, this is really cool. And then it grew, and I hired another person to work with me. And then along came a competitor who said, I would like you to not be in business anymore. And I said, I would like to not be in business anymore. Can you write a check big enough to get me out of business? And he said, absolutely. And he did. And then COVID happened and his business collapsed and I had the check. So it worked out. Actually, they were just acquired. So it all worked out well. And in the back of my mind, I remember leaving my final meeting with him saying, well, that was interesting. I'm never going to have to worry about cameras again. And then COVID happened. And all of a sudden, this synergy between what I had spent a couple years as a hobby and later as a side hustle doing became a necessity. All of a sudden, the live streaming stuff that I had picked up along the way became crucial to our life together. And all of a sudden, all the knowledge of cameras that I had suddenly was relevant. And so I kind of wrestled with how best to do that, because there's part of me that wants to dive in deep and fix everyone's tech problems, and that just creates a bigger problem than you had when you started. And it has been a journey and an experience for me to kind of learn to balance my helping side with technological realities. So we are now 2 years post the onset of COVID-19. And it is safe to say that technology and its integration into the life of the church is here to stay. One of the things that I really appreciate as a presbytery staff person is the number of fewer miles on my car that I have been able to put on for quick, simple meetings, even the last couple months, right? I love in-person meetings, session meetings, big things like that, but man, the ease to hop on a personnel committee meeting at 15 minutes notice for a half an hour and then sign off, that has been a game changer, and it's welcome, right? But one of the things that I have observed, and I'm sure none of you have made this mistake in your churches, so I'm not talking about you, is embracing technology for the sake of technology. And it usually goes something like this. Well, if we don't use technology better, we won't be able to engage young people. Okay? And that's actually what I wanted to talk a little bit about tonight, and when it comes to technology and how we integrate it. But to talk about how we integrate technology, we need to talk a little bit about 3 other things that I think are really, really, really important. Now, I gave you a handout. This will not be collected, nor will it be graded. So you don't need to do anything with this. But I am a listener who is an active listener. For some people that means they listen well and they reflect back to others. No, it means I have to be doing something in order to effectively listen. I'm a note taker, so I love handouts. So if you want to follow along, you can. If you don't need to, I promise. So there's 3 key terms I want to define for the conversation about technology, its integration into the life of the church. First is vision. What do we want to see happen? What's our desired outcome? Down the road, if we do whatever we're going to do effectively, what do we want to see happen? That's vision. Mission says what we're going to do to accomplish the vision, right? So vision is what we want to see. Mission is what we're going to do. And then strategy says how we're going to do what we're going to do to accomplish the vision. So you've got vision, mission, and strategy. And I thought for fun, I would let you all see a vision, mission, and strategy that I had a pretty instrumental role in writing. And it's down below. So when I was serving in Hampton, this was the vision, mission, and strategy statements that we had developed. So our vision, what we want to see, is that our youth would have a passionate and consequential faith. So that they have a personal story about God they can share. They have a deep connection to others in the church. They have a sense of God-driven purpose for their lives. And they have a sense of hope about their future. That's what we wanted to see. Those were our indicators of success. So that if a student, when they finished their time in our ministry, could identify those 4 things, we had done our ministry well. That was the vision. That's what we wanted to see. The mission, what we were going to do, in response to the grace of Jesus Christ and in obedience to the Holy Spirit, our mission is to partner with families to make disciples of the youth of our community. Now, I'll be fully honest with you. That vision statement, I really still love. That mission statement is really, really weak. It's really weak. It's a weak mission statement. There's nothing really distinctive about it. The problem is that there's not actually a whole lot distinctive about mission statements in most churches because we all pretty much are committed to the same things, right? But the strategy statements, this says, okay, how are we going to do that mission so that we accomplish our vision? So we said things like partner well with families. We wanted to create an environment that was safe and welcoming and engaging. We wanted to provide opportunities for leadership development. We wanted to emphasize the idea of belonging. The church was your place where you fit, over emphasizing believing, saying, what is it that you believe in order to be a part of us? We wanted to form adult leaders who live like Jesus and love like Jesus. And we wanted to teach students how to think rather than just what to think, not think, just what to think. And create an environment in which hard questions are encouraged. Okay? So this was our vision, our mission, and our strategy statements. Now those are actually strategy values, and I could get into a long diatribe on strategy values for strategy practices, but that's for another meeting, right? Here's what I want you to notice. Mind you, I said I was a nerd. Do you think I use technology in leading the ministry at the church? Absolutely. Every year before our day camp, I made all the counselors sit down in the studio. Okay, it was a closet that I co-opted into a studio, and I recorded counselor bios, and we mailed and we posted them on YouTube and sent them out to our campers and their parents, and said, "Hey, before you come next week, here's your counselors. Here's a little bit about our staff." After every single difficult youth group conversation, aka the series is on dating and sexuality, I would haul whatever poor seminary intern was in my care at the time up to the studio, and we would record a recap video so that parents heard from us first what we said at youth group before the kids got home and told them what we then said at youth group. We used technology a lot. Do you see technology explicitly mentioned anywhere in the mission, the vision, or the strategy? No. No. Technology in the life of the church, technology period, is seldom the strategy. I don't send an email for the sake of sending an email. I send an email for the sake of communicating with someone else, right? We don't live stream for the sake of saying that we live stream, right? We don't do things with technology for their own sake. We do them as part of a strategy. The challenge is, in a lot of our churches, is that in the rush to get into the COVID world, we had to embrace technology quickly and without a whole lot of thought, right? And so I saw some of the most terrifying setups in my life where people stacked seminary books they hadn't used in years up this high, propped their laptop up, and were leading worship. And I was praying not for their message, but for their laptop, right? Because if it came down, it was, I suddenly had pastor friends of mine who were like, Brian, what's a graphics process, GP, what's the thing I don't have so I can't export my video, right? It was just, we just dove headfirst into it because we didn't have a choice. And now that we're emerging out of what we would say is like the most critical phase of COVID-19, we are beginning to find churches who are saying, do we need to live stream anymore? Do we really need to keep doing Zoom meetings? Do we need to? And that's a really, really good question. But it's the wrong question. The right question is, what is our strategy? What is our vision? What is our mission? What is our strategy? And can technology help us accomplish that strategy better? So turn to the next page. To figure out how to use technology well, you have to be able to define your strategy well. Our churches, and I'm speaking specifically of our churches, because in other parts of the church, they love talking about strategy. Our churches tend to be allergic to defining their ministry strategies because it feels too businesslike. I've sat in so many meetings where people have said, well, we're not a business, we're a church. It's true, but I've heard the same rationale given when I've asked questions, well, what's your strategy for engaging families in your community? Oh, well, that sounds too businessy for us. Here's the thing. Your church has a strategy for how you go about the work that you do. It's just explicit or implicit. Either you've defined it or it just is what it is, right? Want proof? How many of you have a sign outside your church? Why do we have church signs? To communicate to people passing by, right? So what kind of information is on a church sign? Time, right? Time, what else? Name, right? Name, what else? Upcoming events can be on there. Sermon titles can be on there. Websites can be on there. Phone numbers can be on there. Why? What's the strategy behind having a church sign? Information, right? We want people to be able to find our church. So we have a church sign, right? You have a sign strategy. Now, probably most of you haven't had the joy of driving by the Lutheran church that's near Passavant Hospital in the North Hills, which was notorious for two things: having no young people and having the worst joke writer in the world on the church sign. So nobody went to that church, but everybody knew that church. Because people would say, oh, that's the church with the sign, right? Yeah, okay. They had a sign strategy. It wasn't a good one, but they had one, right? We have strategies. Many churches have websites and Facebook pages. We have a communication strategy, whether we've defined it or not, right? We have a strategy for engaging young families. It may not be working very well, and it may not be defined, but we have one. Everyone has a strategy. It's just whether it's explicit or implicit. Before you figure out how to use technology, you must be clear on the vision, the mission, and the strategy. If you're going to do technology well, you need to back up first, right? So the question, should we keep live streaming, is a good question, but it's the fourth question you need to ask. The first question is, what is the purpose and vision for worship in our church? How do we want to accomplish that vision? And what are the specific strategies we want to implement in order to carry out that mission and vision? And then, will some form of technology, live streaming, PowerPoint slides, projectors, etc., will that enable our strategy, mission, and vision? Technology is the tool by which those things are accomplished. Technology is never the vision or the mission. It's always, at most, part of the strategy. And technology is best used to augment or to enhance an existing strategy. Okay, you've heard enough of me talking. It's now time for you to do some work at your tables. I want you to start thinking about worship. Worship in the life of your congregation. And I want you to think about what is the vision, what is the mission, and what is the strategy. And actually, we'll do this one together, and then I'll have you split up and kind of do it amongst your table. So in general, someone give me, what is the vision for Sunday morning worship? What are we going for? Proclamation of the word, right? So yes, we want to preach the word. What else is part of our vision? Discipleship. Equipping, right? So we want to equip the saints. Okay? What else? Connection. We want people to feel connected to God and connected to one another. Okay? So those are some good visions. Some of them kind of get specific mission and strategy pieces. But in general, worship is, from our book of order, designed for the equipping of the saints. Right? So that's the vision. We want people to leave Sunday morning equipped for their faith. Okay, that's one vision statement. Other people could say, we want people to have an encounter with the living God, right? At the church that I served, at the close of the announcements, the line was always the same. Let us prepare ourselves to be encountered by the risen and reigning Lord Jesus. And then we went into worship, right? That was part of the vision. Okay, the mission, right? The mission is, how are we going to facilitate this? So this gets into some of the things that we talked about, right? We want to read Scripture and have it proclaimed faithfully, right? We want to gather people together in a space in which they can connect, all right? And we want then our mission, our work there, to facilitate that encounter, to facilitate that equipping. Then we get down to strategy, right? What's your strategy? Praise band, organ, pastor, seats, lights, right? Lighting becomes a really big deal in most of our churches, all right? How do I know? Because people came to me and were like, Brian, we want to live stream. And I walked in and there's no lighting to live stream anything from a sanctuary, right? Like all this is part of our strategy of how we're going to carry out worship, right? So we want people to have an encounter with the risen and reigning Lord Jesus, to be equipped for their faith living Monday to Friday. And we're going to do it through music and proclamation. We're going to have, lemonade on the lawn afterwards to facilitate connection as part of our Sunday morning worship experience, right? Then the question becomes, what then is the value of technology, right? What is the value of technology? One of my favorite adaptations, I think, for post-COVID worship is I love the fact that many of our churches have stopped using hymnals. Okay? Now before you think, what's wrong with you, hear me out. As a visitor, it is much easier to read out of the bulletin than to dig it through a hymnal, right? It's an accessibility piece. Now, I know you music purists are saying, but then how do you follow along with the melody? I hear you, right? And I'm not advocating to not put the hymn numbers in. I'm just saying, that's a technological adaptation that is that we can copy and paste words into our bulletins that are easier and more accessible, right? It's also, by the way, easier and more accessible for kids because they can hold the bulletin at their height, right? Now, we don't think of printing words in a bulletin as a technological adaptation, but it is, okay? So now what I do want you to do at your tables is think about your education program and define this however you want. This can be the Tuesday morning ladies Bible study. It can be your Wednesday night kids club. It can be your Sunday school class on Sunday morning. Take some time at your tables. And by the way, fill this out for you in your church, right? Because all of you are not from the same church. But fill this out for your church, and if you're with people from your church, have a conversation about it. But then kind of share a little bit, and then answer that fourth question. How can technology enhance, oh, I just copied and pasted. Sorry. How can technology enhance our education experience, right? So down at the bottom it says worship. Under each of those, disregard the typo. How can technology enhance our education experience, okay? How can education enhance our leadership? And by leadership, I mean things like session and committee meetings. And we'll do the last one on the back together. So do those two. Think about your leadership, so committee meetings, session meetings, and your education program. We'll spend a couple minutes thinking about that, and then we'll have some time to share. All right. I am curious to hear kind of what you talked about. And I'm going to ask a couple people who are comfortable sharing. You can share on education. You can share on leadership. Ralph and I were back there brainstorming as far as like a presbytery staff, some of this stuff too. But I'm curious to hear from you all as to what you kind of came up with mission, vision, strategy, and how technology can enhance it. You know, I wasn't gonna say anything except to say that my boss was talking right through my presentation. No, just to share examples of what you talked about as far as vision, mission, strategy, and how technology can enhance that. I'm going to refrain from picking on someone because I want to go over to the next one and kind of talk about this one together. So let's talk about service within our churches, right? Service is one of the things, and what this I mean is acts of service, right? Serving at soup kitchens, serving at ministries like the Table, going on weekend trips, going on summer mission trips. This is not normally one that we think about technology as something that you use, right? You're not going to live stream a mission trip, right? But let's talk about it. What's the vision? Why do we do service? What do we want to see from, like, what's the desired outcome we want to see in doing service? Bonus points if you can quote one of the 6 great ends of the church for your answer. We want to see people encountering God. Yes. What else? What's another part of that vision?
I think a lot of times when we have either a night out serving at the Table or a short-term mission trip, what we're trying to do is to create a laboratory where people can practice growing in these skills in a kind of controlled community environment.
Yep. So part of the vision of service, right, is we want to see people changed. Right? We want to see ourselves transformed by what we experience there. We want people to be able to practice their faith, right? And so that gets into the mission. If the vision is transform lives, the mission is by practicing their faith, by actually carrying out, as Dave said, in a laboratory setting. So then what's the strategy, right? It is evening out service projects, it is short-term mission trips, it's weekends, it's things like that. Okay, that's what we want to see. That's how we're going to do it, and that's some of the ways we're going to do it. How can technology enhance that? There you go, right? One strategy is to say, okay, as part of our social media strategy, we're going to post every day pictures of the work that we've done and where we are, right? So that members can see that, so the members are informed, so that other people who visit our Facebook page can see the work that we're doing. Great. What's another way that technology can enhance service? Graham.
Yeah, I'll go back to my prior church. But anytime people went on a mission trip, we encouraged them not only to
Absolutely. One of the key things about doing service is coming back and telling the story, sharing the story of what it was that happened on that trip. The last trip that I went on was in 2019. I went to a program called High School Camp. The people who put it on were really aces at making distinctive, cool names. They called it High School Camp. And on the surface, if you just looked at the pictures, it was hosted at a resort and water park in Tennessee. It was a rough life. Someone had to go, okay? So I took one for the team. But on the rough life, it's like, okay, it looks like you did some worship and it looks like you rode a lot of water slides. What was the point? So we did exactly what Graham said. I lined up every kid and volunteer, and I said, what did you take away from high school camp? And the narrative around high school camp, because they got to tell the story of what they encountered, changed. When I was at Hampton 2010, I led a mission trip to the Bahamas. There's a problem in the Bahamas in that they will serve anybody alcohol, including 4 underage American teenagers who decided on our free day to enjoy a few beverages at Senior Frogs. We busted them, of course, and they got in a lot of trouble. And as I was coming home, I realized that the narrative around this trip was going to be shaped by whatever message got out first. If the message was, oh, that's the trip that Brian took kids on that they drank, that's not going to be good for the ministry, our fundraising efforts next year, or my career prospects. So, when we got home, on the plane, I told the kids, guys, I need you to write down what your takeaways are from your time in the Bahamas. We landed on Friday night. Saturday, I spent all day editing a video of pictures and the quotes from the kids. And on Sunday, we played it. And I heard not a word about the drinking. Because the message that got out was, oh yeah, some things went wrong, but look at all the other kids who talked about what they learned and what they experienced, right? We use technology not to replace service, right, but to enhance it.
I was at a church on Sunday, and someone here is from that church that did something that is technology at a really, really basic level. But I was impressed by it, and I'll share it with you. They have a program that they're inviting people in the church to take pictures from the community in which they are serving and submit them and put them on the bulletin cover instead of those things that you get from wherever. So on the bulletin cover is a picture of the community. And that is a really low-tech but effective way of using technology to remind us of where we are.
Yep, we'll work all this out. All right, we are a little tight on time, so I want to get to the next page and the 10 Tech Commandments. Now, if you're thinking that sounds like a Hamilton reference, you're right. If you're waiting for a rap, you're wrong. Not going to happen. But these are Brian's 10 Tech Commandments. As you think through vision, mission, strategy, and then think, okay, how can technology enhance this? Here are the 10 things that I think you must think about. Number 1, the most important tech resources are human resources. Okay? Just, 2 weeks ago, Nancy, or was it last week? I came out to your church, right? And what did I say to you at the end? I said the most important thing is to have systems that your people can run, right? To have systems that your people can run. Because the best technology in the world, if no one knows how to use it, is a really good dust trap and nothing else. Okay? So the most important tech resources are human resources. When I was talking about things during the height of the pandemic, people said, Brian, what do you recommend we buy? I recommend you buy what your people know how to use, right? I knew how to use a specific set of tools. I recommended those tools to people, but at the end of the day, if your people knew something else, do that. Do what your people know how to do, okay? I have my favorite brands and products. Doesn't matter. Do what your people know how to do. The most important tech resources are human resources. Second, and I cannot underscore this one enough, the most important tech skill is not knowing how something works. It's being able to troubleshoot it when it doesn't work. Okay, online Presbyterian meetings, hybrid Presbyterian meetings. How many of those have we had at least one technological snafu? Every single meeting. The December Presbyterian meeting. Brian Wallace shows up at Parkwood Presbyterian Church, hits power on his computer, and nothing happens. at all. Luckily, Parkwood Presbyterian Church is 3 minutes from my house. I drove home, grabbed my desktop computer, and drove back to Parkwood. Right? It wasn't that I knew how to run an online Zoom meeting. It was that I knew how to troubleshoot it and had a backup plan. Okay? It's really not knowing how it works. It's knowing how to troubleshoot it. It's knowing to unplug and replug. It's knowing to go into settings and modify things. This is the hard part. When it all works, anybody can do it. It's when it doesn't. And troubleshooting is the most important skill. Number 3, something will always go wrong. It's not a matter of what, or it's not a matter if, it's a matter of what. Okay?
Add to that, Brian, it will happen 5 minutes before the service starts.
Or, Graham, as happened to me on Saturday night, I was asked to come film the Hampton High School musical. They want to use it. One of their Gene Kelly judges may not be able to make it this weekend, so they wanted me to record it for the Gene Kelly judge. Okay, so I pull everything together, and I'm sitting there. We are 2 minutes away from Act 2 starting, and my main camera shuts off. And it keeps flipping on and off and on and off and on and off. And I want to tell you that I remained Christ-like and holy in that moment. And that would be another sin. So I am like panicking. And then I said to myself, okay, shut it all off and turn it on. Shut it all off, turn it back on, and it worked. Right? That's the key. The key is being able to troubleshoot in the moment. And I said, okay, if this doesn't work, what am I going to do? What's plan B? It's always about troubleshooting. Something will always go wrong. Mic won't work. Something, it's okay, right? The same setup that worked perfectly last week cannot work this week, right? It's the nature of tech. So something will always go wrong. Anticipate it and expect it. Not using technology is better than using it poorly. I was at a church recently. I love this congregation dearly. They are not represented in this room. They make a big deal out of live streaming their services, and their main camera is absolute garbage. I looked at the stream today, and it is terrible. It is a dark sanctuary, and I was preaching, and that's why I was listening to it, and it is grainy, and it is hard to see, and it is hard to watch, right? Like, it's kind of like when you go to the church website, and the last update was from 2019. You're better off not having one. You're better off not live streaming than live streaming poorly. You're better off not doing hybrid Zoom meetings with your session than doing them poorly, right? So not using technology is better than using it poorly. Number 5, quality matters. See number 4. See number 4. I had one pastor who was like, Brian, one of my members donated us a new video camera. It's like, oh, great. And so I had agreed to come down and look at their setup and kind of give them an assessment, and he showed it to me, and I recognized it immediately. It was a camcorder that costs approximately $70, is manufactured in China, and works maybe 50% of the time. And I looked at him and I said, I don't have the heart to tell you this, but I do. This is garbage, don't use it. Well, Brian, but it's the only thing we have. Exactly. Use something else, right? They used it the first week. Guess what? It shorted out in the middle of the service, and that was it, right? Quality matters. And this is number 6, and this is the one I hated to write, but it's true. The amount of money you need to spend on technological solutions is indirectly proportional to the level of tech know-how in your community. The higher level of tech know-how you have in your community, the less money you need to spend. There's no other way around that. If you have a lot of people who are very adept with tech, you can DIY your solutions. You can do it yourself. If you don't, you need to pay for someone with that expertise to get your tech solution set up, right? I have looked at more contractor quotes in the last 2 years for cameras and sound, and I will tell you the markup on those things makes me sick. Because I look at something and I say, I could do that for $4,000, equipment and everything. And they're charging $20, right? But the problem is that they don't have the tech know how to do it in-house, and therefore they need to pay someone. It is indirectly proportional to the level of tech know-how in your community, right? Every single youth pastor I know, starting in March of 2020, became the Livestream director. Why? Because everyone was like, well, you're under 40, you know how to run this thing, right? Right? But it was true. I mean, it's just every one of us is like, hey, how's your Livestream job going? But yet, churches that didn't have a millennial, I think at one of my live streaming things, I said, find your favorite millennial, buy them a nice dinner, give them a stipend, and have them be your tech person to help you figure all this stuff out, right? But if you don't have those people, then you need to pay, right? The contractors have tremendous markup, but they are contractors. They do this for a living. They know how to set this thing up for people to push and to make it easy. Number 7, ongoing support is more important than the initial installation and training. If you buy a brand new sound system, you need to find out whether that company will be available for you to call when it breaks. Not if it breaks, but when it breaks. Okay? And if they're not going to do that, find another company. If they go out of business, find another company who can be your on-call. What you don't want to have happen is Saturday night, you go in, or Sunday morning you go in to turn on the soundboard, and it doesn't turn on. So you muddle through worship that Sunday, and Monday morning you go, well, who do we call? I don't know. You want to have the person who you can call when it doesn't work, preset and ready to go. So if the people who put your sound system in are out of business, find someone new and build a connection with them, build a relationship with them so that when it doesn't work, you can have someone come in and help out. Number 8, there's a fine balance between convenience and accessibility. Don't engage or tolerate tech shaming. Okay? I'm going to give you a very concrete example. At the upcoming May Presbyterian meeting, we have done our last couple of Presbyterian meetings either online or we have done them in hybrid in December. And we had a staff meeting a couple weeks ago in which I said, I don't want to manage hybrid Presbyterian meetings anymore. And so this upcoming Presbyterian meeting will not be hybrid. But we made the decision that we will live stream it. So we won't have a Zoom, right? You can't weigh in, you can't vote, you can't speak unless you're in the room. But if you want to follow along at home and watch the meeting, that's fine. We can do that, right? We made a decision here to say, look, if people want to fully participate, vote and speak, they need to show up. But if they just want to follow along, we're happy to live stream it for them. And I was talking with one of my friends last night. She's a young mom. And she said, Brian, that's great. I have childcare lined up for that Thursday. But if that falls through, at least I can follow along. Right? At least I can follow along. That's what I'm talking about. My wife's cousin, they have three kids, 3 and under. Yeah, 3 kids, 3 and under. Okay? And they have discovered that pajama church in February is a gift from Jesus himself. Because if you ever tried to get 3 kids, 3 and under, in boots, out of the house into church, you know that there were literally battles in World War II that were easier to win than that, right? I mean, it is a hard task. And so they just learned if it was lousy and snowy and a kid had the sniffles, couch church it was. And so what I hear now is a lot of shaming, of saying, well, people just don't want to come to church anymore. Okay, there's some of that. There's some of that, right? There is some of that of people just wanting convenience, wanting to be easy. But on the other hand, I want us to keep in mind that there's a line between convenience and accessibility. People now who are looking for churches expect to be able to watch their church online first before they show up in the door. It's the expectation. I immediately go and look at a church's online presence. It's the first thing that I go and look for. What's the service like? What's the preaching like? What are they used to? That's the expectation now, right? And so it's this line between shaming, which I don't think is good, and acknowledging that, yeah, some people are going to take the easy way out, but you're going to be more accessible to other people. Number 9, tech solutions are highly and completely contextual. What works one place will not work in another. Let me explain. If you have been to the Friendship congregation in the Oakland area, they do one of the best, and mind you, I haven't been to all your churches, so don't be offended. They do one of the best hybrid worship experiences that I've seen in this presbytery. They have a flat screen TV up front, so people who are on Zoom can raise up prayer requests, can be seen. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. And it only works because of the size of the congregation and the worship space. Okay? If Westminster, for example, tried that, it would be an utter disaster to try and do that model there. Right? It just wouldn't work. The model, the technological solutions you come up with are highly, highly contextual, down to very small details, like, can you get good internet in your sanctuary? Right? Can you get good internet? If the answer is no, then guess what? Don't do it. Right? And so, like, even tonight, right? Kathy asked me, do you need to use a projector? No. All slides would have done tonight would be to irritate you. I would rather give you a handout to take home. Okay? And then I thought, well, maybe we could live stream it. And then I realized that was the second worst idea I had, because nobody cares. Nobody cares that I'm up here talking to you all tonight, right? And so I was like, you know what we could do? We could record it. Because then, if by chance I said something valuable that you want to share with your session, I can make it available to you, right? And so as I thought through the strategy even for this meeting, I quickly threw out, look, I don't need the slides. I don't want to try and live stream it, but you know what? Yeah, we can record it because that's easy and doable, and someone might actually watch it. That's not the right solution all the time, but it's the right solution for this meeting. So they're highly contextual.
Brian,
Yes.
one of our owners asked me if this was going to be live streamed.
Did they really?
Just FYI.
I feel. Well, luckily it was recorded. And last but not least, tech solutions need to be reviewed and revisited. Technology changes fast, and what was unthinkable 2 years ago is now common. I'll give you an example. In 2015, I did a wedding video for my cousin. And the camera I used to shoot this wedding video, when I fixed it and set it all up, weighed 14 pounds. And I hauled this thing around, and I mean, everybody commented, right? 2 years later, same family, different wedding, different people, just to be clear. And this time the camera weighed 4 pounds. And I could walk around with a 4-pound camera. This past summer, I got to do another wedding, and this camera weighed 2 pounds. From 14 pounds to 2 pounds, and way better quality in the matter of 7 years, right? What was awesome and amazing in 2015 is now commonplace. Some of you in your churches have better cameras than that thing I used for the first wedding that you paid $700 for on Amazon, right? That's how fast technology moves. And that's one of the key things is that your solutions need to be reviewed and revisited. I marvel at how quick stuff has changed, right? Even as someone who's very engaged in what tech is new, I'm still surprised at how quick stuff changes. So, those are my 10 tech commandments. We need to wrap up. I'm going to stick around a little bit if you have specific questions, but I'm going to invite my dear friend Ralph up.